In today's 21st century world, technology has been rapidly emerging as such they have the ability to improve one's lifestyle and simplify complicated things. With technology emerging, the adoption of e-government has been very active as almost every countries are steering their administration more towards the digital platform rather than the traditional way as it promotes numerous benefits to the government and the citizen. Malaysia is not an exception as our administration has been actively carried out through the cyber world. Despite numerous benefits offered by the usage of e-government, this administration method failed to include and serve justice to persons with disability as a consumer. World Health Organization (WHO), through its publication of Classification of Functioning Disability and Health, has been using disability as an umbrella term to include bodily impairments, activity limitations, and participation restrictions that are related to a health condition. And as of January 2021, there are an estimated 592,856 registered as Malaysia's persons with disability.
E-government is a short originally derived from the words of electronic governments. It defines the usage of information and communication technologies, or well known as ICTs, to enhance the government's functions with the objective to increase the efficiency, transparency, and citizen participation. As mentioned by Marcella and Baxter in 1990, another main reasons for many countries are implementing e-government nowadays are because it is supporting the government to become more democratic and transparent. Malaysia is also working in the same path as other countries. Malaysia ranks 47th out of 193 countries in the list of e-government development index in 2020. Despite of being top 50 most advanced usage of e-government, there are real issues that needed to be addressed to Malaysia government regarding to the lack of inclusiveness in their e-government system, specifically towards persons with disabilities group. Quoted by Tim Berners-Lee, the directors and inventors of W3C, he said that supposedly the cyber world should not create a barrier-free medium that the physical world could not offer. However, with the issue of lack of inclusiveness, it seems that persons with disabilities were also facing discriminations in the internet world. Considering the current Malaysia e-government systems, design and implementation, it is no exaggeration to say that some of the government's websites seem to alienate persons with disabilities in accessing the government's websites. Those, first and foremost, our problem statement is it can be seen in the Malaysia e-government's designs, system and implementation itself. The second problem statement that was identified is the current extension that was used in some of the government's websites. There are a few of government's websites that comply to WAI. However, it was found that most of the extensions are not completed, nor universally adapted to every government's websites and various categories. Persons with disabilities had to download various of additional extensions in the App Store just so they can browse the internet conveniently.
One of the objectives that we would like to highlight is to suggest a disabled-friendly widget extension as a solution to help persons with disability. According to Malaysia's Persons with Disabilities Act 2000 Section 30 of Access to Information, Communication and Technology highlighted that persons with disabilities shall have the right to access to information, communication and technology on equal basis with persons without disabilities. However, even with the existence of the said Act, there are still many governmental portals that are not designed universally easily and inclusively. And one way to solve this is through implementing a built-in widget extension that are full of disabled user-friendly. The features should be able to complement their needs, like changing the web's font to a more dyslexia-friendly font, or enlarging the font size for the visually impaired users, and this will surely improve their user experience. Secondly is to urge policymakers to create a policy and awareness for people with disability web browsing session. Just like how public facilities must be compliant with the Malaysia Standard Code of Practice on access for disabled persons to buildings, the government too should start outlining the guideline of how governmental portals should be designed and operate in order to promote inclusive web designs. A policy should be urged to issue on the framework of web designs for all governmental portal designs. The web design should be standardized to avoid any confusion to the user while making them feel confident in their browsing activities, as it adopts the same system and methods for all governmental webs. Through a policy making, universal and inclusive web design can be achieved, as those in charge are left but no choice but to comply to the policy created.
The first one is to comply to W3C's suggestions. W3C have provided a critical and effective frameworks for inclusive web design for people with disability, namely Web Accessibility Initiative (WAI). There are many requirements that was highlighted in WAI, such as suggesting specific fonts, using certain colors, and many more. For web designers, besides that, W3C also recommending the implementation of widget extension. The widget extension that we are going to frequently mention after this can be understood as a built-in system that is implemented to every government website, and its performance should be working effectively while actively updating new features from time to time based on the growth of needs addressed. We highly recommend it to create and use the widget extension merely because the widget extensions seems to be more preferable, as it still made the website's functions normally for normal users, and it also complement people with disabilities. Despite of the advancements of technology that we enjoy today, many developers and web designers did not really pay attention too much to persons with disabilities. The truth is, the smartphone developers in general has better understanding as better implementation in building apps that could help persons with disabilities to optimize their smartphones regardless of their disabilities. For instance, in most common most used operating systems such as Android and iOS, the developers has the built-in apps, namely as accessibility, that offers various of features such as talkbacks, visibility, and hearing enhancements for persons with disabilities. On the other hand, the participation of PC developers in creating assistance to help persons with disabilities in browsing internet are very minimal. Despite of many difficulties that PC users have to face, there are a few of government's websites has taken their own initiative to counter this problem.
Few improvements can be made to Malaysia's e-government websites. Taking an example from Userway Widget Extension, these features can be opted by persons with disability as they can be helpful in complementing their shortcomings. Each of the functions available has its own way to enhance the user's experience. For example, dyslexia people say to have trouble reading, but their readability can be improved by the usage of certain type of fonts. By opting for the dyslexia-friendly option, the web's font can be changed to a font that is readable by dyslexia people. This can enhance their experience in browsing the government's web, as their reading ability won't be hampered. Through standardizing the system and function of the widget extension on all government's web, whether it be in desktop or smartphone format, it will ease the user's movement and web browsing dynamics as they are familiar with its design. Malaysia's e-government services can be improved and boosted by implementing and standardizing the built-in feature to all government sites. It is able to cater to a wider consumer base. Websites with fewer barriers will be more pleasant to visit for persons with disability rather than the opposite. An inclusive and universal web design can make them feel at ease since they are familiar with how the website works while feeling confident with their ability in finding trustable information and services. Fostering trust for persons with disability to utilize the e-government by making the web accessible is vital in order to eliminate their worries on whether the information and services they search on is trustable. Inspired from United States Section 508 Rehabilitation Act that encourage accessibility framework mandatory to maintain citizen welfare, Malaysia's government can create its own accessibility framework for the locals to adopt. The framework should outline on how a website should work, designed and operated based on the local community and government standard. Although we have Malaysia's Persons with Disability Act 2008, a specific policy that protects the right of persons with disability right to equal access to information and services online should be mandated, just like how United States Section 508 of Rehabilitation Act created and functioned. A policy can be created by making it mandatory for all government websites to be inclusive. By taking this into a more serious level through policy making, the government will have no choice but to adhere to the policy created. Through the implementation of the widget extension tool to all existing government websites, it will have the ability to change the browser activity dynamics and the local culture of web designing to be more inclusive and universal. It will influence private websites to adopt the same system. They will soon realize that by creating an inclusive web design, more revenue can be created and have the ability to create a loyal or returning customer wider consumer groups. Eventually, this will have the potential to be commercialized as it creates a job demand in the ICT field, as these investors will need to hire local talent in web designing to help them build their own accessible website.
In fine, the proposed built-in widget extension tools could be the solution to solve the e-government web inclusivity with persons with disabilities. However, it must be noted that the built-in tools that we recommended to build is limited to only visual and cognitive impaired users instead of 100% inclusive to all types of disabilities. Some physical disabilities like cerebral palsy and spinal cord injury might require external assistive technology of alternative input devices like joysticks, wands, sip and puff systems, which helps in their movements. To emphasize, in order to combat the issue of inclusivity of persons with disabilities in e-government inclusive, universal and standardized tool is needed in assisting them, such as built-in widget extension. In hope, may it empower and build faith and increase the involvement of persons with disabilities in e-government, as they are also worthy of the society too.